This is the story of a man with only an 8th grade education who amassed a fortune in lumber, banking, and real estate. A man who built a city by a bayou and brought international trade to a city by digging a deep water port. A man called upon by 3 presidents during 2 world wars. A man seen as the most powerful man in America, second only to the president. A man who rode out of Texas in the depths of the Depression to help his country in its darkest hour. A man who left a vast fortune to future generations. They called this man Mr. Houston, Jesse H. Jones, whose leadership left a legacy as big as the Lone Star State.
On April 5, 1874, Jesse Holman Jones was born on his father's tobacco farm in Robertson County, Tennessee. Young Jesse didn't enjoy school and dropped out after the 8th grade to manage his father's tobacco warehouse. There, he developed his leadership skills by buying and bartering with men twice his age. At 19, Jesse moved to Dallas, Texas, to join his uncle, Martin T. Jones, in the lumber industry. After his uncle's death in 1898, Jones was called to Houston to manage his late uncle's lumber yards.
On a lazy August day in 1898, Jesse Jones arrived in Houston. It would be his home for the next 58 years. He would become a wheeler and dealer in the banking industry, borrowing money to expand his lumber business. He used his profits to purchase property near downtown Houston. Buying and selling homes on long-term credit shaped Jones's business philosophy for years to come. In 1908, Jones began construction of the Houston Chronicle building, which bought him a half interest in the growing newspaper. 35 of Houston's earliest skyscrapers were built as a result of Jones's leadership, leaving his legacy permanently carved into the Houston skyline.
Jesse Jones quickly became the premier financier in Houston, leading Houston's National Bank of Commerce. His philosophy was simple: if Houston prospered, he would thrive. Jones and his fellow business leaders soon realized without access to the sea, Houston's growth was limited. Buffalo Bayou trickled through Houston and down into Galveston Bay, but it was too shallow for ocean-going vessels. By 1909, Jones had led the way, securing federal funding to dredge Buffalo Bayou, beginning development of Houston's first port. Houston paid half the cost of dredging the 50-mile channel.
He was instrumental in raising the money to develop the Houston Ship Channel, and the Houston Ship Channel has proven to be a huge economic engine for the region.
This joint public works project internationalized the city overnight, provided jobs, and elevated the economy, all courtesy of Mr. Houston.
In 1917, the United States was drawn into a world war. President Woodrow Wilson asked Jesse Jones to lead the campaign to raise Houston's share of the American Red Cross War Fund. After Houston raised more than $250,000, Wilson appointed Jones director of the Department of Military Relief. Under Jones' leadership, the DMR shipped 95 entire hospitals to Europe, serving thousands of wounded Americans. 50,000 nurses were recruited, trained, and dispatched under the slogan, "American Nurses for American Men." Jones organized a network of ambulances that transported wounded soldiers to hospitals and care clinics. As the war to end all wars drew to an end, a new battle would begin against the Spanish influenza. Jones led the fight against the flu by organizing a Red Cross fundraiser. The public donated $181 million, the largest sum ever raised for humanitarian purposes. His leadership role in the Red Cross during World War I evolved the organization into an international effort for the greater good.
In the winter of 1927, Jesse Jones would assume a new leadership role, this time in the arena of politics.
On behalf of Houston and the entire state of Texas, I extend you a most cordial invitation to hold the Democratic National Convention in Houston.
Jones traveled to Washington, D.C., carrying a check for $200,000. Houston's bid to host the 1928 Democratic National Convention. After much debate, the committee accepted the offer.
It was important to have a convention in the South. This really put Houston on the map and gave them the sense that they had finally arrived as an important city.
Houston was now on the map, and so was Jesse Jones. On a chilly Sunday afternoon, October 25, 1931, Jones gathered the most prominent businessmen in Houston in his office on the top floor of the Gulf Oil Building.
Jones was a leader in the effort to keep the local banks in Houston from failing, and he got all the bankers and several businessmen in Houston to prop up and buy out two weak banks to keep them from failing, and this restored confidence in the Houston banking community.
Jesse Jones's proactive leadership caught the attention of President Herbert Hoover, and in 1932, he appointed Jones to the board of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. The RFC's purpose was to provide loans to banks and businesses to stimulate the economy and defeat the Depression. However, despite the RFC's efforts, the economy continued to collapse. In 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt became president and expanded the RFC's power with the RFC Act and promoted Jones to chairman. The RFC became a cornerstone in Roosevelt's New Deal, and Jesse Jones became known as the fourth branch of government. FDR drew criticism for appointing Jones because of his risky business philosophy. Conservatives questioned if a well-known gambler should be handing out billions of taxpayer dollars. As chairman, Jones funneled billions of dollars towards needy banks, businesses, and farms, not as charity, but as an investment in the American people. In 1941, Time magazine dubbed Jones the second most powerful man in Washington. Roosevelt teasingly called him Jesus H. Jones, and the house that Jesse built became a popular headline.
With the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, America entered World War II. The U.S. had the manpower, but desperately needed factories to produce supplies for the war effort, and Jesse Jones led the mobilization to make American industry the arsenal of democracy. Using the RFC, Jones loaned $20 billion to create businesses and factories that produced the supplies necessary to support the armed forces overseas. In 1945, with the Japanese surrender, World War II officially ended. The end of the war marked the end of the Great Depression. The U.S. emerged as a military superpower and a major player in global trade, due in part to the efforts of Jesse Jones. After 14 years of public service, Jones retired to Houston in 1947 to serve the people of the Bayou City, living out his remaining years involved in philanthropic endeavors. He continued to inspire his city to grow towards the sky by funding prominent structures such as Jones Performance Hall, the San Jacinto Monument, and the Jesse H. Jones Rotary Hotel for cancer patients.
On June 1, 1956, Jesse Holman Jones passed peacefully in his sleep. At the graveside service, one could look west and see Jones's legacy etched into the Houston skyline. To the east, the growing metal mass of the petrochemical plants rose along the Houston Ship Channel, and to the far north stood the San Jacinto Monument, all testaments to Jones's leadership. Jones's Houston Ship Channel, which opened in 1915, now generates more than $178.5 billion annually in revenue and contributes over 1 million jobs to the Texas economy. In 1928, Jones returned the Democratic National Convention to the South, marking a milestone in American politics.
There will be no North and no South, no East and no West, just one for all and all for one.
As director of the RFC from 1932 to 1947, Jones loaned more than $2 billion to state and local governments.
As much as any other single figure, Jesse Jones saved the American economy in the depths of the Depression.
Established in 1937, Jones's Houston Endowment has awarded over 11,000 educational scholarships and donated over $2.6 billion to charity.
In the end, he donated all of his wealth to a philanthropic foundation so that it could help improve life for the people of Greater Houston.
Jones's extensive work for the development and growth of Houston earned him the nickname Mr. Houston. In the final analysis, Jesse Jones's leadership left a mark not only on Houston's history, but our nation's history, and left a legacy as big as the Lone Star State.